Does it look? I even look. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the conclusion of episode 6 or 6.5, which I like to call it, covering domestic violence. As usual, me and my co-host talk about all types of issues from a single lady, which is myself, a married lady, Karen Owens, and a divorced lady, Jackie White.
Hello.
Oh, and then we lose. Then we lose her.
We lost him.
Yep, we lost him.
Technical difficulties.
Yes, yes.
Oh, where'd she go? Can't believe.
Yeah, I'm waiting for her to come back to be admitted back in.
Oh, sorry about this, Dawn.
That's quite all right. I do so much work on Zoom, and you just have to go with it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You never know what's going to happen, so it's all good.
Okay.
And you will be her first time she moderated. So I'm like, did she get nervous and hit the wrong button?
Nope. Like, nope, never mind.
Nope, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I think she just sent. Did she just send you a text message, Karen?
I don't know. I'm waiting for her to. Yeah, she said, but
What'd she say?
She said, I got kicked out, I got hot out, she got something. But I don't know.
I don't know.
So during the pandemic, I had come across an article about Zoom anxiety and that it's a real thing. And it talked about like, having technical difficulties, or your internet's not working, or your pet's going to be barking, and just, all those things that, we worry about when we're jumping on a Zoom meeting. And I read the article. I'm like, yes, this is so real.
Definitely is real.
And
okay, look, I'm back. I got kicked out. I don't know how that happened. So what did I do?
Well, you were introducing us.
Right. Okay. Well, back to us. So I'm Kim, single lady. Also, there's Karen Owens, which is our married lady, and Jackie White, who is our divorce diva. So we have our special guest back panelist, Dawn. Dawn, I'm gonna let you say your own last name because I don't want to butcher it. So how do you pronounce your last name?
Tenayuki.
Tenayuki. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back, and thank you for coming back.
Yes.
So where we left off kind of in the last episode was, does domestic violence happen to men? And we want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things with domestic violence, it really has no boundaries. So, domestic violence, can affect men and women, children, folks of all, different economic status, all those different things. So yes, most certainly men are victims of domestic violence. I think it probably happens more than we realize, or more than is reported. And, men are less likely to come forward and say that they're in a domestic violence situation for a number of reasons. Our society sees men as, strong people, and, they, are the protectors, things like that. So, for a man to come forward and say that, they're being abused in, one way or another, is less likely to happen. However, that doesn't mean that, men aren't victims of domestic violence, because it certainly happens quite a bit. And I was reading a study, and in their study, they found that the amount of domestic violence with women was almost equal to that of men. And so, like I said, yes, it does happen, and men are, victims of domestic violence as well. We generally think, that men are, I'm sorry, women, generally are victimized more than men. But like I said, it has no boundaries. Certainly, a number of folks are, victimized. So it certainly does happen.
Okay, and I just have a little follow-up question in that.
Yeah.
So is for men, does it tend to be more like mental, verbal, financial than it does physical?
I think generally speaking, domestic violence tends to be all of those things as opposed to physical. And, we talked last time that, a lot of times when we think about domestic violence, we think about that physical abuse, but the majority of the time it is that emotional and psychological abuse that happens more often than the physical. So I would say that, yeah, it's more that controlling behavior, the emotional abuse that happens. Certainly there can be physical, but I think some of those other dynamics are more present than, or more common to find than the physical abuse.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, Karen.
So we have the period, we are in the period, or we can't say that COVID is over with. Did domestic violence rise within the COVID because now more people are home? We had a shutdown where you had to be home, could nobody be out in the street. Did numbers go up?
I don't know that numbers went up, but I think one of the significant things that we found, especially once some of those restrictions started to be lifted after we had that initial lockdown back in March of 2020, what we started to see is that injuries that folks had were very, very significant. Injuries were very severe. So it wasn't that we were seeing more, but what we were seeing was more dangerous. Injuries were more severe. Even with our sexual assault victims, it was the same thing that we were seeing. So, I think with folks being stuck home, they may have stayed a little bit longer, or unable to reach out for resources and things like that. So it greatly did impact folks in that way. And like I said, we just saw, such significant injuries, once some of those restrictions started to be lifted. And with COVID and the lockdown, that certainly, for, folks that we work with and victims of domestic violence, that's definitely not a good position for them, to be, stuck at home and you can't go anywhere. And so yeah, that's kind of what we were seeing.
Okay.
All right. The next question is, what are some of the long-term effects of domestic violence?
A lot of folks, do report, difficulty sleeping, or having, trouble with flashbacks or triggers. There may be something very simple, such as a sound or a gesture, a smell, things like that can oftentimes trigger folks. And sometimes folks may have depression, or like I said, trouble sleeping. Some folks may have substance abuse issues or eating disorders. So all of those things can kind of play a role in some of those long-term effects. And it takes time to heal and process everything that has happened. but, seeking help and, sometimes, a support group, when you're around others that have been through similar situations can be very powerful. And just having that, collective group that can, continue to help support you, through that healing process can be very beneficial.
All right. Jackie, do you have any follow-up questions to that?
Yes, actually, that was my question. As I mentioned in the first episode, I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I did seek counseling, and my counselor mentioned that I suffer from PTSD.
Mhm.
I have some of those symptoms, the problem sleeping, the overeating, the nervousness.
Mhm.
A lot of my issues were dealing in my domestic violence situation with the financial. So I'm very, very stingy with how I spend my money.
Mhm.
And I'm not as free flowing as I, used to.
Yeah.
So I do know, and I do see the signs that I do suffer from PTSD,
Mhm.
and and I still have a lot of issues with people not believing that I was a victim or a survivor. I like to say
Yeah.
survivor.
Yeah.
So, and I still suffer from PTSD with that, because people are like, no, he wouldn't have done that.
Mhm.
Do you find that, a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. Because yeah, there, some of those, kind of those long-term effects can stick with you for a long time. And I completely agree with you. There's things for myself because I'm a survivor as well. And so there's little things that you just can't do, you know what I mean? So for example, I don't like to be scared, like don't jump out at me or tap me on the shoulder and I don't know you're there. I'm immediately gonna just, kind of cringe up. And so, some things some of those things are really hard to lose because those are triggers or things that your body's just responding to. And yeah, the financial abuse, if that was something that was present, that can certainly have some long-term effects. I had a girlfriend of mine that told me, don't ever be in a situation that you can't get out. And so especially when that comes to finances or just your household, always know that you can get out. Don't put yourself in a position where you're trapped or you don't have the resources or the finances. And so that's something that I always have in the back of my mind, right? If I had to get out, I can get out. And not that that's an issue that's present for me, but
Right.
that's something that I've learned, and it's something that's always in the back of my mind, to think about. So yeah, those, some of those things can certainly be long term. And then, like you said, folks not, believing that really happened. That's unfortunately that's common, where survivors are not believed, or it wasn't really that bad, or, I just can't picture him doing something like that. And we talk a lot about believing survivors, and no matter what they're coming to you and saying, believe it, always believe it. And because that can be so powerful to believe that's the story that they're telling you and the impact that can have. And I remember the first time I had a professional who validated what I was going through. And I was like, oh, wow, she does believe me. And it made such a huge impact for me to hear that professional person say that back to me, like, yes, this is what's going on. And that meant a lot, So, and, when we look at, sexual assault or domestic violence, anybody that's coming forward and sharing that, always believe them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine it's just a struggle just to say anything. Because some of them be in it for so long that to even admit that they're going through this, it has to be a struggle. So I truly believe that we should believe them, just believe them and see
Yep.
what happens, you know. Very far and few are people lying about what they're going through. I mean, if they're lying,
Yeah.
you tend to know
Right.
a liar what's going on, but to believe somebody when you share, because I can imagine you ladies probably didn't want to tell anybody what was going on until you
Mhm.
just
Right.
like, I'm ready to get out. Enough is enough. Let's go. So
Mhm.
I love that we need to believe and believe the women that saying, and the men that may be
Mhm.
saying,
Yep.
and our children and our teenagers. The teenagers
Yes.
go through this too, I hear, you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
domestic violence and what
Yeah.
have you.
So when domestic violence and sexual assault, somebody's coming forward, to share that and the courage that it takes to come forward. Generally speaking, people don't make that up. Why would you?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Why would you say, oh, I was raped or I've been assaulted? It doesn't happen. And it doesn't matter if you're an adult woman, if you're a teenager, if you're a 7-year-old child or a grown man, if they're coming forward and sharing that, believe it, and help them through that process. And even when it comes to like law enforcement, and we hear about false reports that are being made, whether it's domestic violence or sexual assault, those cases are very few and far between. Again, why is somebody going to go to law enforcement and say this
Right.
happened to me when it didn't? Like
Right.
nobody wants to,
Right.
come forward and say those things to a police officer when it really didn't happen. So, the same thing there. It's very few cases, that are not true or accurate,
Mhm.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. I got a little emotional there. So,
So what can we do to help women or help persons, not women per se, anybody? What should we do if someone came to us? What should be our first step?
Well, believe them.
Mhm.
And be there to be a supportive person and help them through that process. And I think for the person that is experiencing that, it's important to help guide them and offer those resources and that emotional support. But truly, they have to be the ones to make that decision. It's important to give them the power to make those choices for themselves, and not saying, well, this is what I think you should do, right? Because that's your perspective, and you're not in there, you're truly not in their shoes to know what they're experiencing. But you can certainly continue to offer that emotional support and offer them choices and things that they could do, and let them decide what they want to do. And maybe they don't want the help right now, and that's okay. They have their reasons for that, but continue to be there for them. And when they're ready to get out of that situation and they call you and say, I'm ready, then be ready, and be that support person, for them. It's also important to safety plan with folks that are in a domestic violence situation and they are trying to get out. I think sometimes it's easy for folks to say, well, just get out, just leave, you have a safe place to go. And the danger level is higher when they're trying to leave or they have left, compared to when they're staying in the abusive situation. So it's more dangerous for them to try to leave or they have left than staying there and enduring the abuse. And domestic violence is about power and control. Okay. So if the person is kind of standing up for themselves, trying to get themselves out of the situation, then the abuser feels like they're losing control. So if the person is trying to remove themselves from the situation, the abuser feels like they're losing control, and they're going to up the ante to get that control back. So it becomes so much more dangerous when that person is trying to leave or they have left. So keeping that in mind, because, certainly we want people to be safe and get out of situations like these, but you really have to be careful and not just say, well, just go do this, because there's a lot of other things that need to be taken into consideration, and carefully plan how they're going to get out. And then when they are out of that situation, you have to continuously safety plan. And that safety plan is going to look different. It's going to look different when they initially left. It's going to look different, at different stages. So if that person needs to file for a restraining order, maybe they need to file for divorce, maybe they need to, file for custody. All of those things are really going to impact their safety. So,
I never even thought about that.
those are really, really important things to consider.
That's good. I never thought about planning every step, because I would say, just get out. Come to my house, just get out. You think it's so simple, but never think about there's other factors in this. Is do they know where you're going? If they come here, what are our plans if they do come to where you are? So we have to, that makes sense. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So definitely safety planning, all those different steps. And if, we always tell folks too, if weird things are happening, log it, keep track of everything. Maybe you randomly get a flat tire, and then randomly there's something in your mailbox, and, different things like that, certainly could be, just part of that abuse, part of that stalking once that person has left. So, just making sure, you're keeping track and documenting those things, and then safety planning around them. Maybe that person doesn't travel alone for the first, 30 days once they leave their abuser, so they're not alone, and, just being mindful of a lot of those things. But the danger level definitely escalates once the person leaves.
Oh,
Yeah, that's interesting to know. I know we talked about what can we do, or what can a person do. And I know there's the 1-800, domestic violence hotline out there. Where are places? I know you work for the Y. I used to work down there myself a few years ago. So it was kind of ironic that I used to be a domestic violence counselor, and then I found myself in that situation. So it can happen to anyone. So where are other places, or what services do you guys offer?
Yeah, so with the YWCA Greater Flint, we cover all of Genesee County, and so we do have an emergency shelter. We have 32 beds in our shelter for women and children. We also can take in women and children who are victims of sexual assault and human trafficking as well in our county. And we also have, victim advocates on staff and case managers. So even if somebody doesn't come into shelter, but they're still seeking services, maybe they're needing a restraining order, maybe they just need to talk to somebody and kind of figure out what's going on, or, do some of that safety planning and crisis counseling. We can certainly do that, and they don't have to be, in our shelter in order to do that. And like I said, we can assist with filing for a restraining order, or maybe going to court with them, or keeping them up to date as to, what's going on with any legal proceedings that may be going on. So for Genesee County, we are that primary domestic violence program, that folks can reach out to. But there are, other providers within Genesee County that certainly can help with some of these issues. For example, Voices for Children, who is working with, kids that have experienced child abuse or sexual abuse. But they work with the whole family, and they have therapists on staff and support groups and things like that. So although the child may be the direct victim, they, certainly look at that holistic approach and working with the whole family. And so there are services available. There is help available. We do have a crisis line that's available 24/7. And so, anybody could call that number and, talk to the advocate that answers the phone. And if for some reason it isn't a service or something that we provide, we certainly would provide that referral, to whoever, within our area or surrounding area, would be able to assist them with. There is the National Domestic Violence Hotline number as well. So, if you're outside of Genesee County and don't know where your domestic violence program is, you could always contact that national number and they'll redirect you to your local program. Pretty much every county everywhere has a domestic violence program. So it's just a matter of, figuring out who that provider is and what services, they provide. So that's certainly something that the national number could help with if you were unsure.
Okay. All right.
So Dawn, most definitely before we get off the call, do you happen to have that number on you now for the Y, or
Yep.
I can get it for you, like, what is it?
It's 810-238-SAFE, which is 238-7233. And all services are free and confidential, and our crisis line is 24/7. So anybody can call at any time.
Okay, I got one quick question.
Okay.
Before we end today. Now, is there any way that a person that's getting into a relationship can start to see these signs like right away? I would think jealousy or extremes, somebody meeting somebody that's extremely jealous would be like a red flag, kind of like automatically. Is that a true statement?
Yes. Yeah. So there may be extreme jealousy, especially in the beginning of the relationship. But, abusers are great manipulators. So you may not recognize it for what it is. You may think, oh my gosh, he's into
me.
He's into me. Yeah. He doesn't want me talking to anybody else.
Right.
Or,
that's cute. Right. Mhm.
Right. Yeah. So it gets misinterpreted. But that certainly is a red flag, and along with that is, some of that isolation. Don't hang out with your friends tonight. Let's hang out, just me and you. Or you don't need to hang out with your family. Let's just do something together. And again, in the beginning of a relationship, sure, you're still getting to know each other. And,
Right.
but, as those things progress, they become more and more significant as that relationship continues. But there certainly are red flags. And, sometimes, like I said, it's hard to kind of pick that up, when you're in that relationship. But there's always red flags, present. I think, for myself and Jackie, we can certainly probably look back and pick those out pretty easily. And not pick up on them, at the time. But there's always, there's certainly some red flags there. And again, as a supportive person, if you're noticing those, you can certainly try to share those with that person. They may not want to hear it, but, continue to be that supportive person and, talking about what a healthy relationship does look like, because those red flags aren't present in a healthy relationship, right? In a domestic violence relationship, there's a significant power imbalance. And, the abuser, perpetrator, it's all about power and control. And so you can see that very early on.
Thank you. Ladies, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you, Dawn, for sharing your story and sharing, what the YWCA does. And if I ever decide to move back to Flint, I'm gonna be looking for a job.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, definitely keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so again, I want to shoot out that number to you all. It is 810-238-7233. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And that's
for the local number.
Right.
And here we go with the national, just in case. We're just gonna put that out there.
All right, very good, very good.
All right. Oh, so we don't get cut off this time like we did last time. We are at the end of our segment or our episode 6.5, ending with domestic violence. Thank you again, Dawn, so very
Thank
very
you.
much for coming on. We're going to also probably have you on again after the beginning of the year to talk about some other things that we talked about.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much for becoming one of SMD Viewpoint's greatest panelists. We would also like to thank Kimberly Woodson. She was we weren't able to get in touch with her for this particular show today, but we'll be getting back in contact with her as well. Ladies, thank you so very much and peace out.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.